Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. We can move on to item 1.2 of our agenda, which is roll call. And we'll ask our clerk, Jesse Clark, to please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Lamstead, are you present?
I am present.
Deputy Mayor Armstrong? Present. Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Braybrook?
Present.
Councillor Cadigan?
Present.
For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CAO Treasurer. Present. Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Barbara Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Planner.
Present.
Bianca Dragicevic, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
Derek Bertram, Planning Technician.
Present.
Chastity Robertson, Deputy Treasurer.
Present.
And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services, Clerk, is present.
Okay, thank you very much, Jesse. We can move on to item 1.3 of our agenda, which is land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge that Trent Lakes and Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nation, which include Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island First Nations. Trent Lakes respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibilities as members of council. Okay, thank you very much. We can move on to item 2 of our agenda, which is disclosure of pecuniary interest. If any member of council has an interest in an item on the agenda, please disclose it now or anytime during the meeting prior to discussing anything on the item you have an interest in. Seeing none, we can move on to item 3 of our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda as circulated. I would entertain a motion for second. Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a mover and Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to item 4 of our agenda, which is the adoption of the minutes. 4.1 is our regular council meeting of March the 5th, 2024. Councillor Cadigan for a mover and Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 5 of our agenda, which is committees and boards. Item 5.1 and 5.2 are committee board. One is library board. We can do them all separately or the two at one motion. Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Motion to adopt both.
Do I have a seconder? I see Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on to item 5.3 of our agenda, which is liaison reports for committee boards and council boards and committees. Anyone have any liaison reports? I'm seeing none. We can move on to item 6 of our agenda, which is our statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. I will need a motion to suspend our regular council meeting and go into an open meeting. Councillor Braybrook for a mover, Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We are now in a public meeting, and I would ask Derek Bertram to please introduce this file.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamstead, this is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an amendment to the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw, B 2014-070. A notice of public meeting for today's application containing the prescribed information was circulated to all landowners within a 120-meter radius of the subject lands at least 20 days prior to this meeting, and a sign was posted on the subject land in accordance with the Planning Act. The notice was also mailed to all prescribed agencies, public bodies, and persons in accordance with the regulations. Anyone wanting to be notified of any decision from today's public meeting must inform either myself or the clerk, and a notice of passing will be mailed to them setting out the method and manner in which appeals may be made to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person does not set in a written comment prior to the passing of the bylaw or make an oral submission at the public meeting, that person may not be entitled to appeal the decision. Today, we have a public meeting for file number 2402 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by agent Patrick Baranowski on behalf of property owner Joshua Johnson and Nicole Campbell for the property municipally known as 201 Northern Avenue. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is a condition of severance B 10722 for a lot addition to the benefiting property known as 201 Northern Avenue. The lands being added to the benefiting lands are zoned rural, while the benefiting lands are currently zoned as rural residential. To prevent a split zoned lot, the severed lands and benefiting lands are being zoned to rural residential special exception 26 with a holding provision to reflect the increased size and frontage of the resulting lot. The holding provision will be added to the severed parcel due to the presence of unevaluated wetlands having been identified during the severance process. There is a planning report attached to today's agenda in support of the zoning bylaw amendment. And the planning report identifies that the application is consistent with the provincial policies and meets the purpose and intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw. No comments have been received from the agency circulated or from the public. However, staff have responded to a few inquiries regarding this application. This concludes the summary of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Mr. Mayor, I now turn it over to you to the public input portion of the meeting. And if anyone would like to speak on behalf of this application at this time, please use your raise a hand function if you're in the virtual gallery, or physically raise your hand now if you're in the physical gallery. So we have the ability to promote you in order to make an oral submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek Bertram, our planning technician. Anyone in the gallery would like to speak to this item? I'm seeing no hands. Is there anyone online that would like to speak? Please raise your hand.
I see no hands.
We have seen no hands online. Anyone on council have any questions or comments? Wow, that's a neat one. Thank you very much. That must mean you've given us all the information we need to make a great decision. Okay, I think we're done with that. We can move now. I would need a motion to reconvene our regular council meeting. I see Councillor Cadigan for a mover and Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are now back in our regular council meeting, and we can move on to item 7 of our agenda, which is business arising out of a statutory public meeting. And Derek Bertram, our planning technician, can you please speak to this item?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Lambshead, subsequent to the planning meeting held today for file number 2402, at this time, planning staff recommend that council receive the report from the planner and further that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment reflecting the recommendations of this report, which is on today's agenda for consideration.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek. Anyone have any comments or questions, or is prepared to make a motion? See Councillor Braybrook.
Make a motion to receive and also to approve zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder for that motion? The Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on now to the 8 public meeting. 8.1, and Adele Arbor, our planner, would like to speak to this item.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Lambshead. This is a public meeting for 2 proposed Rogers wireless telecommunication tower installations as part of the Ewarn Cell Gap project. A public meeting is a requirement of the council-approved policy, protocol, and guidelines for establishing radio communication facilities within the municipality of Trent Lakes. In accordance with municipal policy, Rogers has completed the following: a submission of a site selection justification report for each site. They have advertised the proposed towers in both the Lakefield Herald and the Kawartha Promoter on March 1st. An information package was mailed to every property owner located 180 meters from a proposed tower known as C8592 and 356.8 meters for tower known as C8593, which equates to a radius about 3 times the height of the tower as identified in our protocol. Municipal staff have posted this information on our municipal website. Rogers site C8592 is identified as Allen's Alley and Crystal Lake Road and is proposed at the Crystal Lake Transfer Site located at 665 Crystal Lake Road. A report was approved by council at the May 16, 2023 council meeting, which approved the telecommunication tower at this location and the signing of a telecommunications site agreement with Rogers. The proposal is for a 60-meter self-supporting telecommunication tower, including the antennas, a lightning rod, and an obstruction light if one is required by Transport Canada. An equipment shelter will also be installed at the base of the proposed tower, and the entire site will be surrounded by a security fence with a locked gated access point. At one point prior to Rogers selecting the transfer site, they did consider a co-location at a nearby existing bell tower 6 kilometers away. However, determined that the structure was too far away to improve service or provide service to their targeted area. Rogers site C8593, White Lakes Road, is proposed on a property 550 meters south of Fire Route 345 and 49 meters from White Lakes Road. This is a treed property with a significant setback from other residential and waterfront properties. This property, or the proposed tower on this property, is a 95-meter guide tower installation and will include an ancillary equipment structure surrounded by chain link fencing. Rogers, during their site selection process, did consider co-location with an existing bell tower 6.2 kilometers away and determined it was too far to improve service in the targeted area. Staff have circulated the applications to the County Public Works as well as to our municipal building and fire departments. No concerns were identified. The fire chief has made previous comments that if required by the fire department, he would like the reserved opportunity to be able to add equipment to the tower. This would necessitate an agreement between the municipality and Rogers and includes an annual fee. Rogers advises both these sites fit the criteria to maximize and improve network coverage for wireless users in the area and is part of the Eorn Cell Gap project. Rogers will be accepting written comments from the public until March 31st. After today's public meeting, the next steps in the process include the following. Rogers will provide a summary report to the municipality, and upon receipt and review by staff, a report will be provided to council at a subsequent council meeting. Council will then be required to provide a resolution in support or against the proposed Rogers towers, which will include drafting a concurrence or non-concurrence letter to be forwarded to ISED, which is the approval authority for radio communication facilities. Eric Belchamber, a representative of Rogers, is participating electronically today to provide a summary of any comments received to date and to answer any questions that council may have. Mayor Lambshead, I now turn the public input portion of the public meeting over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele Arbor, our planner. Is there anybody that would like to comment on this file? Seeing none, go ahead.
I don't know what
Just-
the protocol is here, but.
Just state your name for the record, please.
Steve Baker. And I was curious, I don't know what the protocol is for the meeting, whether or not questions are limited to council or the audience.
We're in a public art portion, so you're quite welcome to say.
Does Rogers coordinate with Port of Lakes regarding the towers?
I think Adele or,
I happen to be on County Road 49.
Yes.
Right between two towers that don't quite reach me. And I know that EORN has approved sites around my property, but I've been trying to find out from them which ones they actually intend to pursue. And I was curious if someone knew that or whether it was coordination with the lakes on the matter.
thank you. Adele, would you want to speak to that or?
Through you, Mr. Bear, I think that question would be more appropriate to the Rogers rep.
Okay. Rogers rep, please unmute yourself and could you answer that question?
Certainly. Thank you very much, Mayor Lambshead. I would be happy to help this individual. He could contact me by email or phone, and I could look at the specifics pertaining to the ones in Kawartha Lakes. I have worked on some in the past and would be happy to help in any way I can.
Great. If I could get that information, that'd be terrific.
Okay.
I would add that the organization EORN does not respond to inquiries.
Make sure we bring that up with our our county warden,
Thank you.
who sits on that committee. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Lamb, sitting through you. Two questions. One is very specific. And I think you received an email about this, Eric. Within the package, the notice package, which I was sending out to our ratepayers groups in advance, there were 4 pictures of a location at Fire Route 348 in South Salmon Lake, which has nothing to do with the, as far as I can tell, with the location of the second tower at White Lake Road and White Lake. So I wondered why they were in the package. It just confused me.
Through you, Mayor Lamshead, the site naming at the bottom of those images is a Rogers derived site name. They show the correct location and the correct vantage points for that particular tower, C8593.
You understand?
Not entirely. So I think it's a vantage point. So as opposed to the proposed location for the tower. Is that what I'm understanding?
We have to show what the proposed tower would look like from various vantage points to comply with ISAD's protocol. And
Okay.
so the yellow dot is where the tower would go, and the 2 red dots are where the images were prepared and produced from.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you. The second question, through you, Mayor Lamb, said, first of all, this is great news. We knew that through EORN, there were going to be up 300 new towers in Eastern Ontario, and with the 2 on 507 and these 2, that makes 4 for us, which is a big win. Happy to hear that. I'll ask the same question, which is our residents are probably split between Bell and Rogers subscriptions. So what is the likelihood or any plans for Bell to be able to use those towers or co-locate onto those same towers?
Through your Mayor Lamshead, I can't speak to Bell or Telus's long-term service or coverage plans, but we are required to allow co-location. So in the event Bell decides that they want to improve service for their customers in those areas, then they will be able to co-locate and put antennas on this existing infrastructure.
So just to follow up, if I
Okay.
may, so
Yep.
that it has to be at Bell's initiative that would happen, then, is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
One more question. Is SBE going to be the owner of the tower, or is it Rogers or Bell?
Both of these towers are Rogers-owned towers. Companies like SBA are third-party tower companies that from time to time will approach carriers saying that they have a piece of infrastructure and would Rogers like to co-locate on it, and then charge fees accordingly.
Great. For the record, I am a Rogers customer.
Hey, any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, I support both of these applications, but I'm just curious, the newspaper ads, one was the Lakeville Herald and one was the Promoter. Is the Promoter just an online newspaper? So the people in this area wouldn't receive either one of those publications unless they went online. Because the Lakeville Herald doesn't cover anywhere close to those locations.
Okay. Go ahead, Adele.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've also included this on our website, as well as property owners 3 times the height of the tower have been notified as well.
And through the mayor, I do understand the challenges of putting ads in newspapers with most of the newspapers not publishing any longer. So,
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Franzen. Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
A little bit of knowledge I have about Promoter, through you, Mayor, is that they did produce a hard copy in Bob Cajun up until a year or so ago, and it was spread out from there. I'm not sure whether they still do or not.
Okay. Go ahead, Janet. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Through you, Mayor Janet Klein. No, they don't produce a hard copy anymore for Promoter. But I want to ask Adele, when you say notification areas to keep up 3 times the height of the tower, what is that notification area? If I may ask?
I think I can tell you that one is be 3 times 60 meters and the other one will be 3 times 90 meters.
That's correct.
fairly small area.
Very
Thank you,
small.
Al. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Adele.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe the rep from Rogers would be able to tell us if they've received any comments regarding these two towers.
Yes, go ahead, Eric. Could you answer that question?
Sure. Through you, Mayor Lambshead, no, we have not received correspondence or phone calls, emails, or anything about either site.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure some people on Fortescue Lake will be excited about some. Okay, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I think we can just receive all the input.
Okay, is anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Motion to receive the information.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, Eric Belchamber, for joining our meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to item 9 of our agenda, which is presentations. 9.1 is Lori Ritchie, our Healthcare Advancement Coordinator from Peterborough County. Lori, are you on the line?
To you with two requests for letters of support. The first one is a letter that we would send to the Ministry of Health, basically asking for reconsideration of Dr. Poon Raja of the Trent Lakes Health Center to be able to join the City of Kawartha Lakes Family Health Organization. A family health organization is the highest paying group that a family physician can belong to. And the Kawartha Lakes Health Center, or I'm sorry, the Kinmount Health Center is the only one in all of Peterborough County and the City of Kawartha Lakes that is not part of a family health organization. So it's critical that this actually gets approved, not only for Dr. Poon Raja to stay within our community, but for also the further recruitment of additional physicians to this community. And as we know, they are currently seeking 2 more physicians. So it changed in 2022, and the new rules, I feel, are discriminatory against rural communities based on distance between sites. We know that living in rural, that we need to travel great distances for our healthcare, and it's not a problem. So this first letter just simply speaks for a reconsideration of the decision that has been made to deny Dr. Poon Raja to join the City of Lakes Kawartha Family Health Team. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have on this first request. I felt it would be powerful coming from the full council versus from myself.
Well, thank you very much for including us in this, Lori. It's a very important item. Would anyone on council have any questions? I think we have some feedback coming from your computer. There we go. Okay, I see a question from Councillor Cadigan. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Lambshead. Hi, Lori. Have we had any response back from the letter? I know it was a month or 2 ago that it was sent.
It has not been sent yet. It was simply drafted, and I'm waiting for approval from council, and it would be sent on behalf of the Trent Lakes Council. And then I have found, the correct person to send it to, and we're including MPP Smith on it as well as the other councillors. And so no, it has not been sent as of yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Trent.
Yeah, I have a feeling, through you, Mayor, I have a feeling too that we should get Lori Scott involved. She helped recruit the doctor, and she's the MP for the Kinmount and Lindsay area. And I think that we should also include the Council of City of Kawartha Lakes, that medical facility, a large portion of the people that use it live in the City of the Kawartha Lakes. And I think that council should be interested in what happens.
It is my understanding they have also sent a letter of support or in regards to this. And then when I had my initial meeting with them is when I learned about this. And that's when I offered that we too would do one in support of them. So I do believe that a letter has been sent already.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I see Mayor Armstrong, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lambert. I was just building on Councillor Franzen, who brought up some excellent points. We should probably also send it to the county council, since they have some responsibility for physician recruitment for the county. So I would involve them as well.
Through you, Mayor Landshead, just in respect to that, the second letter that we can certainly CC them on this. The second letter that we're going to be speaking about in a moment is asking for support from not only county council, but the other 7 municipalities in writing a letter in response to this discriminatory guideline that has been created with the new 2022 guidelines for entry into a family health organization.
Excellent. And I will certainly bring this up at my next bi-weekly meeting with MPP Smith again. Okay, any other comments or questions? Just go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Through your mayor, this will be coming up again for a notice of motion under item 16.
Well, did you have more you wanted to talk about, Laurie?
Not on this particular letter, thank you. I would like to speak to the other proposed motion.
Okay. All right, we're going to wait till we get to that section on our meeting and you can be more than welcome. Oh, you're going to do it now? Yeah, I guess because it is a different section. Go ahead and speak to that motion, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Landshead. This is a broader motion in which we would be asking the other councils and the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus to be bringing this forth to the ministry's attention, whereby the current guidelines speak about where a group has more than one location, all locations must be within a 5-kilometer radius. We do know that that is just not feasible anywhere within the county of Peterborough. And I do feel that that is discriminatory. It does speak that they would look at it on an individual basis, but I don't feel that that is appropriate. RIO is a Reality Index score, and many of our communities are high. Trent Lakes is a 50, so it is definitely a very high Reality Index. And so this would be something that we would take forward through the various councils, and I would love it if a motion was granted on behalf of the Trent Lakes Council for this to be discussed at other municipality council meetings and the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, so that we can have it coming from multiple directions.
Thank you. Any comments or questions about that? I think this is important that we show a kind of a united front so we get some change made here, because we are, I agree, we are being discriminated against as being rural municipalities because of the distance. I mean, to drive 5 kilometers is nothing. You don't even get out the end of a road. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Braber.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just a comment, Lori. I just wanted to thank you for your advocacy, this important issue. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. We can move on now. I guess we need a motion. Yeah, motion to receive that delegation or presentation. Councillor Cadigan for a mover and Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other comments? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Lori. Greatly appreciate all that you're doing. Okay, we can move on now. You can mute yourself or stay on and watch the rest of our meeting if you like. We can move on to item 10 of our agenda, which is delegations. We have none. We can move on to item 11, which is staff reports. We have item 11.1.1, which is Public Works. Evan Grieger, our Director of Public Works. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Lamstead. Through you, Mayor, to members of the council. Before you today is a report regarding the sand dome procurement process. So just to give you a little background on the sand dome, you may remember about last year around this time, I brought a report and it was sort of detailing the different options we had for a sand storage facility. Council directed to go with the sand dome. It was the cheapest of the options that were provided. And then furthermore, once we got into this year, we were looking to start that procurement process. It was found that there's very limited builders for these sand domes. I could only find one within Ontario. So it was, my thought process was that we could do it. So I just don't want to get the wrong one. It's not a sole source, it's a single. Can you scroll down that? Non-competitive bid process. So it's basically a sole source just to be able to get this ball rolling, but as there is only one bidder, there's basically, you go out into bid and you'd only receive one bid. The reason for bringing this report to council is due to the amount in that it is going to cost. The quote that we received last year was for $440,000. This was in the fall, and he confirmed that quote would be good for this year. And just to give council a little background, so within our purchasing policy, we do have delegated authority that's between the department head and the CAO to do these types of non-competitive bid processes. But within that, when there's discussion internally, because of the amount, we decided it was best just to bring it in front of council, just to have you guys made aware of it. As well, if you didn't feel comfortable with that process, or we could go to an open tender process. However, that's not my recommendation in the report here. So there's some questions and some discussion regarding this.
Okay, thank you very much, Evan Grieger. Anyone have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Lamson. Thanks, Evan, for bringing this forward. I'm fine with this, and I'm fine because there's the provision for what's called an advanced contract award notice, which will ensure, it'll have us go to the market, ensure that in fact there really is only one vendor. So that's kind of protection for us and protection for the process. So, and you have that in the motion. So that, as I say, that safeguards us, and I think that's fine.
Agreed. Any other comments or questions? Is anyone? Go ahead.
Thank you.
Councilor Braybrook.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Thanks, Evan. I just made a couple of questions. In your background, you state that this type of building was proprietary to Storage Systems Construction Corporation within Ontario, and that they are the only builder that completes this type of building in the province. Are you able to comment as to whether or not companies would be able to complete this type of work, such as Tasco, Dome Buildings, Cobra Structures, or Van Pelt Construction, or others?
Thank you, Councilor Braybrook. Through you, Mayor Lamson, to Councilor Braybrook. Clearly, you've done your research, because those are some definitely companies I've looked into. They don't design the sand dome specifically. They have different storage structures. So for example, Van Pelt, they've done some sand dome repairs. They've got those panels from repairs from the Storage Systems Construction Corporation. So they sort of have that proprietary for the design and everything like that. There are different types of domes. The Tasco dome is more of like a round dome looking thing. So there's different options that way, but for the sand dome with the conical shape that sort of we're intending, is that this is the only company from my research that does that. Those are the ones who do similar type buildings, and that's when we brought the report last year, was the explanation that there are different options for sand storage. The Van Pelt was one that I brought to at that time. However, I believe off the top of my head, they're about $150,000 to $200,000 more for the same storage capacity that we're receiving with this sand dome.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Councilor Braybrook.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor. Thanks, Evan, for that. And just in my research, $440,000 is pretty cheap from some of the other areas in Ontario, municipalities in Ontario that have embarked on. Prince Edward County was one of them, and there were some quotes there at 1.4 million for a dome and 2.8 million. Now this particular dome, proposed salt sand dome, that's replacing two domes. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Braybrook. Through you, Mayor Lamson. Yes, it's replacing two domes, and the dome has been sized accordingly to hold the same capacity that those two domes currently have. So right now, the way those domes were designed, they're built in the 70s. They're only operating at a 70 to 75% capacity. So this dome is the total of both those in one dome. So easier to stack. You only have to do one mobilization that way. And what we're finding with those two domes, we get through the whole winter without having to refill them. Well, this winter we've only used one dome. It's been a very strange winter, but that is the intention, that we found that those 2 domes lasted us through the winter. We didn't need anything bigger, but we found that quantity that those 2 domes hold. So we designed the new dome to hold the same quantity that the 2 hold. So.
Okay, one more.
Thank you. One more question. Thanks. Thanks again, Evan. You mentioned the 440,000 quote was an updated quote. What was the original? Was there, and the reason for the update?
Thank you, Councilor Breivik. Through you, Mayor Lambshead to Councilor Breivik. So the original quote I received, I don't want to say off the top because I don't have that number in front of me. It was still in the 4 range, and maybe it was 420 or 425 sort of thing. The reason was I received that quote of spring, like a year ago is when I received that original quote. So obviously over summer, there's been changes in prices and stuff like that. So that was the reason for this. And it wasn't a major increase. It wasn't an increase that I thought was absurd or anything like that. It was sort of understanding where the industry is right now, just with construction prices and stuff like that. It seemed reasonable to me.
Thank you. Thanks. One last comment. I appreciate you coming within your close estimate last year of 400,000. And in one of our other council meetings, you had mentioned that there may be a savings with the 49 depot. So that could offset some of the costs for the salt and sand dome.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions? See, no, I only am curious as to what roofing material we'll be using on our new sand dome, but that'll be down the road, I'm sure. Okay.
So I can speak to that specifically, Mayor Lambshead, for you. They're the shingles that they're quoting us are the 30, like they're the longer ones, so they're 30 years expected useful life for the shingles. So I can't speak to the exact company which they use, but they're design and that speaks to that within the quote, within the warranty, that there's an expected useful life for those shingles as well. So
thank you very much. Okay, any other comments or questions? Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Councilor.
I'd make a motion to support the recommendation from staff.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councilor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, Evan Greer. Okay, we can move on to item 11.2 of our agenda, which is recreation facilities. We have none. We can move on to 11.3, which is fire and rescue. Emergency services, we have none. We can move on to item 11.4, which is building and planning. We have 11.4.1. Adele Arbor, our planner. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Lambshead, a public meeting for Trent Lakes development charges was held on March 5th, and council gave direction to Watson's and Associates to explore 2 categories of residential dwellings based on the number of bedrooms, to review increased charges for aggregate properties to align with current policy, and confirmation of population figures used in the DC background report. Watson and Associates prepared a memorandum in response, which is attached to the staff report. Council had suggested imposing a higher DC charge on larger homes based on a perceived ability to pay from affordability standpoint. This is not permitted under the Development Charges Act. Staff agreed with the comments made by Watson and Associates that the size of a home doesn't correlate to a future occupancy. In the memo from Watson and Associates, a calculation was provided based on the number of bedrooms in a dwelling unit. Using this calculation could result in lower DC recoveries based upon historical data regarding building permits issued. Records indicate that over the last 15 years, approximately 64% of new homes constructed in Trent Lakes were 3 bedrooms or less, and 36% were 4 bedrooms or greater. Staff are recommending the uniform charge of $7,584 for a single detached and semi-detached dwellings to be applied for the following reasons. To calculate the development charge based on the number of bedrooms would be administratively very time consuming. Based on historical data, more homes with 3 bedrooms or less have been constructed in Trent Lakes over the last 15 years. And the vast majority of municipalities calculate a uniform per dwelling unit charge. and keeping in mind the purpose of the development charge is to recover the capital costs associated with residential and non-residential development within a municipality. Should council wish to make any changes to the residential charges, this would necessitate an update to the development charges background study and further another public meeting, which would result in a delay of implementing a new development charge before the current charge expires. In regards to aggregate development charges, staff identified that prior to the passage of the current DC bylaw in 2019, council recommended to impose the fully calculated charge for aggregate developments and impose a discounted charge for non-aggregate developments. Staff are recommending continuing with this approach in the new development charge calculations. The fully calculated development charge would apply to aggregate developments and a lower charge for all other non-residential developments. The full non-residential charge of $42.96 per square meter of gross floor area would be applied to aggregate development. To determine an appropriate development charge for non-aggregate developments, Watson and Associates reviewed the ranking of Trent Lakes among the other 16 municipalities they surveyed and are recommending a $28 per square meter of gross floor area for all other non-residential developments to apply. The proposed DC bylaw has also carried forward an exemption for the first 250 square meters of gross floor area for any new non-residential developments. These charges or these changes to the new non-residential charges would not necessitate an update or an addendum to the DC background study. The new development charges bylaw will be in effect for a 10-year period as opposed to the previous 5-year terms. In regards to the confirmation of population figures used in the background study, the report identifies the source of population figures used, including both permanent and seasonal populations. Staff are in agreement with the proposed population data used. Therefore, it's being recommended the council receive the report from the planner regarding the development charges background study feedback for information, and further that council support the single detached unit charge of $7,584 as recommended in the development charges study prepared by Watson and Associates, and further that council support the non-residential charge of $42.96 per square meter of gross floor area for aggregate development and a $28 charge per square meter of gross floor area for other non-residential developments, and further that council adopt the DC approach to calculate the charges on a uniform municipal-wide basis for all services within the background study, and that council approve the capital project listing set out in Chapter 5 of the DC background study dated February 2nd, 2024, subject to further annual review during the capital budget process, and further that council approve the development charge background study dated February 2nd, 2024, and further that council direct staff to bring the revised development charge bylaws for adoption to the April 2nd, 2024 meeting in advance of the expiry of the current bylaw on April 16th, 2024, and further that council has determined that no further public meeting is required. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele Arbor. Anyone have any questions of Adele? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Lamstead. Comment actually. I believe I was the one who was asking for consideration of 2 categories of development charges for residential dwellings. And really it was, I just want to be very clear on the record that the purpose was not based on the ability to pay. So the rationale behind it was around the number of occupants and their projected usage of infrastructure, basically. So that was the intent. And I thought that it would be useful to have people who are building houses with fewer bedrooms receive some incentive because it's environmentally friendly. We're going towards, more housing affordability, more housing, et cetera. However, I'm comfortable with the direction you're proposing of having just one. And I say that because it's a trade-off between the administrative burden of actually implementing it versus the benefit that we get. And so if it is administratively difficult, and since the vast majority of municipalities do not break down their DC charges in residential to more than one category, you know, and we're looking at 22 new houses a year. So at the end of the day, it's really not a material kind of difference. So I'm satisfied with that, but I thank you for considering it. And in terms of having a higher rate for aggregate operations versus other non-residential, that certainly was a principle that we had put in place many years ago. And I think that this new proposal actually does that. It differentiates aggregates from non-residential. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, just a comment. I was the one that brought forward the ability to pay, and I do not support any increase in the development charges at this time.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment, Councillor Franzen. Any other comments?
I don't know whether I missed it, but it would have been nice to have a breakdown of the Peterborough County municipalities that are similar to ours as far as what their development charges were and their rationale. I know Darrow Dummer, if I'm quoting it correctly, is $6,735. And in North Corth, I believe they were $200 per square foot. I don't know whether I'm interpreting that correctly or if you're able to have any comment as far as that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I apologize, I did bring down the background study, but there were 16 municipalities, and there were municipalities within the county of Peterborough that were included. I'd be happy to share that with you. I just don't have the information with me.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate it. I did see the graph that was provided and that sort of thing. I don't think North Corth was included in that, or was it?
I think Donna Taggart, our CAO treasurer, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, and through you. North Kawartha don't have development charges.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Lamb. So just to clarify, building on Councillor Franz's remark, based on the projections, we have $2.5 million worth of infrastructure that represents investment based on new population. And so the choice is either you assess that across everybody, so everybody's taxes go up, or you recover that from individuals who build new in the municipality. So that's the trade-off. You know, you got to get it from somewhere. So either everybody pays and everybody's taxes go up, or we charge a development charge when somebody builds a new building, and that is directed and focused towards that $2.5 million infrastructure. So to me, that seems a better way to approach it. It's a philosophy thing.
Yeah, well, I think you hear this all over the place at every other municipality at the county, that growth should pay for growth. You understand that comment. Okay, any other comments? Being none, is anyone prepared to make a motion? See, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
I will make the motion, briefly read it. The council received the report that we support the single detached unit charge of $7,584, that we support the non-residential charge of $42.96 per square meter for aggregate development, and the charge of $28 per square meter of gross floor area for other non-residential developments. Further, we adopt the development charge approach to calculate the charges on a uniform municipal-wide basis, and that we, oops, oh my goodness, how many are there? That we approve the capital project listing as provided by the consultant, that we approve the development charges background study, that we direct staff to bring in the revised development charge bylaws for adoption at the April 16th, no, at the April 2nd meeting, which will be before the current one expires. And finally, we would agree that there is no further public meeting required.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? I'm seeing no hands. Is there a seconder for that motion? I'm seeing no hand. Go ahead. Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Is there any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Request a recorded vote.
Okay. I think I now throw this over to our clerk, Jesse Clark's more than capable hands.
You're ready for the vote?
Is there any other comments before we go to the vote? I'm seeing none. Okay, Jesse, go ahead.
Councillor Franzen, are you in favor?
No.
Mayor Landshead?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Armstrong?
Yes.
Councillor Braybrook?
No.
Councillor Cadigan?
Yes.
That is carried.
Okay, thank you very much. That motion has carried. We can move on now to item 11.5 of our agenda, which is finance. We can go to 11.5.1. And Chastity Robertson, our deputy treasurer, would you like to speak to this item? Please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lambshead. Before you is a 2023 statement that details the remuneration and mileage expenses paid to each member of council, council appointees to boards and committees, and conference expenses for members of council. I am recommending that you receive the report from the Deputy Treasurer regarding the 2023 statement on remuneration and expenses for your information.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments or questions from council? I'm seeing none. I want to apologize for never getting my mileage in on time. Anyone prepared to make a motion? See Councillor Franzen?
I'll make a motion to receive.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? See Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other comments or questions?
I just have one comment. The monies I've received from conservation, a good portion of it is mileage.
Yes. Okay, thank you for that advice. Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, everyone. We can move on to item 11.5.2. And Donna Taggart, our CEO Treasurer, would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you, and through you. So before you is the Annual Development Charges Act reporting required under Bill 73, 109, and 23. So you will see that the opening balance in the development charge reserve at January 1, 2023 was $875,997.14. And the closing balance is $930,176.86. There was $107,149 collected in DCs in 2023, $48,492.64 interest earned on the reserves, and $101,461.92 spent on a new to fleet pickup truck for our Public Works Department, roads needs study, and some of the development charge study work, as well as work at Onang Park. So I'm asking today for council to receive the reporting as required annually under those bills, and that the statement be made available to the public through the municipality's website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Donna Taggart. Anyone have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you very much. Donna, the 25,681 that was transferred in the admin reserve fund or GC fund, transferred to capital, what was that for?
So thank you, and through you. That was for the work on the roads needs study and
Right.
also the development charge study.
Great.
And just to elaborate further, there is no ability under the new legislation to use funding for studies anymore, so.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you very much for that. Any other comments or questions? Being none, anyone prepared to make that motion? Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a mover. I see Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. We can move on to item 11.5.3 of our agenda, which is Donna Taggart, our CAO treasurer. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Yes, thank you, and through you. So before you is the accounts payable for January and February 2024 for council's information.
Okay. Anyone have any comments or questions regarding the accounts payable? I do appreciate that we're gaining a lot of ground on the electronic payments. It's great.
Motion to receive.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, Donna. We can move on now to item 11.6, which is administration. We have none. We can move on to 11.7, which is corporate services. 11.7.1, Bianca Dragicevic, our deputy clerk. Could you please speak to this item?
Thank you, and through you. Before you are the council expenses submitted for the month of February and the remainder of January for your approval and authorization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bianca. Okay, anyone have any comments or questions? Seeing none, anyone prepared to make a motion? See Councillor Franzen for a mover.
Motion to receive.
And, okay. And authorize the payment?
Yes.
Okay, and authorize the payment, okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to correspondence for information. I'd like to speak to that item or prepared to make a motion. 12.1 is the Lakers Hall Board minutes. Anyone prepared to make a motion? Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Just a motion to receive.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Good. We can move on to item 13 of our agenda, which is correspondence for action. We can move to 13.1. Anyone like to speak to that item?
I can, through you, Mayor Lamb, I can just speak briefly that this was part of Lori Ritchie's presentation today, and the request is that council direct staff to send the letter as drafted in support of the appeal to the FO.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone prepared to make that a motion? Councillor Cadigan for a mover. Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any conversation?
Sorry, through you, Mayor Lamb, there was discussion during Lori's presentation about potentially adding Lori Scott, City of Kawartha Lakes, and or County Council to this letter. This one is specific to Dr. Leslie and the appeal of that decision that was made. So I leave that to council to determine the appropriate parties to send it to.
Councillor Franzen?
I think it'd be a good idea to send it off. The more people that are fighting on behalf of the doctors in the out, the better.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Through your mayor, City of Kawartha Lakes has sent a letter.
Yeah, I know, but this would be just informing them that we sent a letter and asking them for support. I don't think it hurts.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I think we had a mover and a seconder.
Perhaps I could just confirm with the mover and seconder the intention to send it to add Lori Scott, City of Kawartha Lakes, and County Council to the circulation.
Agreed.
Agreed. A seconder. Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
It was Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone's agreed. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay. Anyone care to speak to item 13.2, or we can do them all in one motion? Or I don't think we want to. I'd like to speak about, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
A motion to receive 13.2.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? I will call for the vote. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, we can move on to item 13.3, the County of Lambton, uploading of infrastructure to the province. Would anyone like to speak to that item? Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Lamson. I would make a motion to support that. They're essentially either asking for uploading the infrastructure to the province or have a mechanism for the province to reimburse the municipalities for the costs of maintaining and repairing. But the point is, the point that they're making is that municipalities simply do not have the funds
Okay,
to support the aging infrastructure.
absolutely. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I have one comment that, like, I think the county of Peterborough is like $90-some million behind on infrastructure. So I think some more funding is needed drastically. Okay, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we can move on to item 13.4 of the agenda, which is the closure of the Peterborough lab. Would anyone like to speak to that item? Seeing none. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I'll make the motion to support it with the comment that we've had some communication from our residents about this. They do rely on the lab for testing their drinking water. I didn't know this, but there are about 150,000 to 175,000 private drinking water samples that the lab tests every year. And many of those people simply will no longer do it, which presents a health risk. And there are many, many other services that they provide. And it's a strong letter that has been written in defense of keeping the lab in Peterborough by people that have either managed that laboratory or managed some of the other laboratories that are proposed for being closed. So it's very compelling to me, and I'd like to support it.
As well. I'm not even looking for a seconder. I would like to second that motion. Did you have a comment?
Yeah,
Councillor Franz.
I have a comment. Thank you, Mayor. Asking people that probably know, is this just a cost-cutting measure or what's the reason for?
I think I can touch on that a little bit from my limited knowledge of this. This was the Auditor General's investigation into the financial part of it. I don't see our province having the same opinion, but it was just an audit of the financial implications of all of these labs all over the country. But we need a lab in Peterborough, and it's pretty obvious. Deputy Armstrong?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mayor Lamson. If I can just build on that, the letter from the previous managers touched on that and said that there probably are opportunities for operating efficiencies. But that's different from closing down labs. Like there are other alternative ways to address concerns that were raised by the Auditor General than simply closing some of the labs.
Okay. Any other comments about that? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor? Motion is carried. Municipality of Brighton, ride share services. Anyone like to comment on that or have a motion? Councillor Cadigan, go ahead.
Motion to receive.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? The Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to item 13.6, the Municipality of Tweed, natural gas in the province of Ontario. Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Motion to receive.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Second, just for comment?
Yes.
Okay, you, Councillor Braybrook's going to second it with a comment. Go ahead, Councillor Braybook.
Thanks very much. I was looking, I was going to make a motion to support, and the reason for that is, I mean, our municipalities in the same boat as Tweed, although we don't have natural gas, but we rely, over 85% of our homes rely on propane for fuel, and it's unknown if everything was electrified, how our electrical grid would handle that. So I'm in support of
Would you like to?
I'll withdraw my motion to receive.
Okay, would you like to make a new motion?
Yeah. a motion to support.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? I will second that motion, just to move along for we have more conversation. Any other comments? I think I have one comment about our aging infrastructure in our municipality. I think we will be at capacity on our grid far sooner than we want if we don't support some other methods of heating and cooling our homes. We'll call for the vote. Any other conversations? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we can move on to item 13.7 of our agenda, which is a township of, I'm not even going to try to say that, Highway 1413. Any comments or? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, sorry.
Motion to receive.
Councillor Franzen.
Second that motion.
Second that motion. Any conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Very much. We can move on to item 14 of our agenda, which is bylaws. Bylaws on the agenda memorandum. Jesse Clark, would you like to speak to that item?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamshead, there's one bylaw on today's agenda that didn't have a corresponding staff report or was not part of a public meeting, and that's B 2024-22, which is a bylaw to amend the fees and charges bylaw to include fees related to sewage system permits. And the public meeting for that was held at the last meeting on March 5th.
Okay, thank you very much. We can do both of these bylaws on one motion, or we can separate them out and do a motion for each if you'd like. Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
I move that we do them all at once.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion to receive them? Approve them? Yeah, okay. Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Now we can move on to item 15 of our agenda, which is business arising out of a previous meeting. Does anyone have any business arising out of a previous meeting? Discuss. I'm seeing none. We can move on to item 16, which is notice of motion. 16.1, Councillor Cadigan has a notice of motion for family health organization guidelines. Can you speak to that item, Councillor Cadigan?
Yes, through you, Mayor Lamshead. Whereas Family Health Organization managed entry process was amended in the Physician Services Agreement of April 2022 states, I don't think I need to read through all that. Basically, it's discriminating against rural townships like our own, whereas all the new entry guidelines have direct negative impact on recruitment and retention of primary care physicians to our rural communities. And recent example of this was the denial of Dr. Leslie Panraja as signatory physician for the City of Kawartha Lakes Family Health Organization. As stated by the Ministry of Health, there's too great a distance amongst the Family Health Organization members, and patients will not be able to access, which is the reality of being a rural municipality. Now, therefore, the Council Municipality of Trent Lakes directs staff with the assistance of Healthcare Advancement Coordinator with the County of Peterborough to write a letter of support for the reversal of this decision and highlight the impact of this decision has upon our community, as well as communities of all lower tier municipalities moving forward, and further, that this letter be circulated to all lower tier municipalities within the Peterborough County for their support, and further, that this letter be circulated to Peterborough County Warden Bonnie Clark to take forward to the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus for further discussion and possible action.
Okay, thank you very much for that motion. Anyone like to speak about? Oh, I guess I should get a second. Are you making that motion?
I am.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Okay. Councillor Franzen is a seconder. Any conversation? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Lamshead. I hope this is relevant. We have a new physician in Buckhorn. And I wondered whether the FO has recognized Dr. Enow as an affiliate of the FO, or if that's relevant.
Go ahead, Donna Taggart, our CEO Treasurer.
Yes, thank you, and through you. So the FO has recognized Dr. Enow, and that he is part of the Peterborough group already. So that
Okay.
he's effective April the 1st, that they has officially recognized.
And if I can just follow that up, but that seems odd. It kind of seems like a double standard because we're clearly more than 5 kilometers away from Peterborough. So it just raises more questions and strengthens the need for
Yeah, thank
supporting
you
this
for some
motion.
clarity and some consistency in that regulation. Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan, you had a question?
Building on the Deputy Armstrong's comments, when I asked at Roma, I was told that it seemed very arbitrary and there was no reason for it. These are new rules that they're arbitrarily enforcing and nobody knows why.
Okay, any other conversation? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, we can move on to item 17 of our agenda, which is information items. Does anyone have any information items they would like to share? The Deputy Mayor Armstrong first.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lamstead, and I apologize in advance for this, Donna. Because I didn't consult with you, but I think we should acknowledge that we've had some residents who did not receive their tax bills. And we are conducting an investigation to find out where the source of the problem is. It appears to have been, all of the proper control procedures appear to have been taken at our end in terms of counts and double counts and all of that, and delivered in the normal manner to the post office. But from there, we do not know what has happened. And it's quite variable. I know that we know of 2 instances where there are clusters of community boxes, and one of our residents received theirs and the other resident didn't. So it's perplexing. I don't know if you want to provide any further comment on that, Donna.
Yeah, so thank you, and through you, I would say you covered it. Just the message, and we've been able to get that out there. If you didn't get your bill, call us, we'll reprint it. We have had a couple of instances where a number of days ago, a reprint's gone out that people have yet to receive. So we're still, working on that, but yeah, definitely call if you didn't receive it.
We need to put a GPS tracker in there. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your questions. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Any other information items? Go ahead, Councillor Braber.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just a brief comment. Our Lakehurst Hall is going to be holding their spring supper June 1st, 5:30. It's going to be a sit down. So please come.
Any other items? Thank you for that information. Okay, seeing none, we can move on to item 18 of our agenda. I would entertain a motion to go into closed. Councillor Cadigan for mover. Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. We are going into closed under the Municipal Act, section 239(2). We discussed B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, municipal employees. And D, labor relations or employee negotiations with municipal employees. So those are the reasons we are going into closed. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And now I will call for the vote. All in favor? Motion is carried. We are now going into closed. Okay, we can move on to item 18.2 of our agenda, which is rise from our closed meeting. I would entertain a motion for same. Councillor Brabert for a mover, Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 19 of our agenda, which is business arising out of our closed meeting. And item 19.1 is the adoption of our minutes from our previous meeting. Anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Brabert for a mover, Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. And we can move on to item 20 of our agenda, which is the adoption of the confirming bylaw, which is item 20.1. We see Councillor Cadigan for a mover, Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on now to item 21 of our agenda, which is adjournment. Would anyone like to motion to adjourn? Councillor Franzen for a mover. Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff. Thank you, council. And thank you, everyone who participated both virtually and in the gallery.